Hi guys. Hello guys. Welcome back to another video. Today we will be crocheting cup cozies. And look how cool they look. If you want to go sell them somewhere, maybe at a craft show or an Etsy, this is so easy to make, and also there's a free template for this, so you can just insert it and it looks professional. I will put the link for the template in the description, and also I will put the pattern in the description as well, so you can crochet along with me. And this one is my favorite. It's colorful, and this is just one yarn. It's actually one yarn that looks like this. It's called Peaches and Cream yarn, and it's one of the cheapest 100% cotton yarns that I found, and it's actually sold anywhere. I think it's at Target, Walmart. So this is the yarn that I'll be using today, the purple one, and they also have this colorful one as well. I am gonna be starting from completely beginning today, so you can see how I am starting this. So I just need to do a slip knot first. So slip knot, and then I'm gonna do 8 chains. Okay, and then I'm gonna single crochet into the second chain from the hook, and then single crochet all of the row, so 7 stitches. And in this project we will be doing yarn under, not yarn over, like usually is done in crochet. If you like to crochet, you would know that most projects are doing yarn over, and this is what is required. But to make this project the way it is, it's kind of like a little bit tighter. The stitches are more close together, so we will be doing yarn under. And yarn under is pretty much the same thing as yarn over. So you do this yarn over, but we go under instead of over. And there's videos as well if you are interested to know. I don't have a video myself, but I'm sure you can find one on YouTube since you are here already. And we will be doing 32 rows like this. Yarn under in the back loop of the 7 stitches. For 32 times. Today's story is very frustrating, and it also includes some graphic details. It won't be soon. The story is very long, and I was actually thinking to put it in 2 parts, but it's so complex to do stories in 2 parts, and I would just rather do it all in one video. So it's gonna be a very long video, but I just wanted to give you guys a warning that this video will contain some graphic details, so just be aware of that. And also, this story is very long. I feel like it might take longer than my usual videos. For this purpose, I might not crochet when telling you some details of the stories, because it makes it easier for me to get the details out and then continue with the crocheting, because I have to count the stitches as well. So sometimes I do that, and I've noticed that in previous videos some people comment that I stop a lot of times and not crochet She was born and raised in a small town called Townbridge Wells, located in Kent, in England. Clare was always willing to help people. She had the kindest soul. She was just a very loving person. And everyone loved to be around her. She always had a smile on her face. Since she was a little girl, Clare always had a passion for makeup, and she actually had a talent for makeup as well. She loved anything to do with beauty and makeup, and her dream as a little girl was to work in an industry with beauty and makeup. This dream came true when in September of 2003, she got a job interview offer for a position as a beauty consultant at Harvey Nichols. And Harvey Nichols is a chain of prestigious luxury department stores, all in one place. And if you've never heard of Harvey Nichols, you're not the only one, because Harvey Nichols is mostly located in England, and they've spread out to some other international countries, but mostly they're located in England, and there's only 7 stores. They're really prestigious, they're huge, they're like a mall inside. There's 7 stores in UK and then 1 in Ireland, and the international locations include Hong Kong, Dubai, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey. I'm not sure about the international stores, but the stores in UK, they're like a whole other world. They have luxury food markets inside, luxury restaurants, fancy luxury cafes and bars. So basically you can shop and eat there as well. So you can imagine how much joy Clare was in when she got an interview at this prestigious place. Her best friend was actually saying that Clare was so nervous to go to this interview that before the interview, before she went in, she was asking him to go over the possible questions with her because she didn't believe in herself. She was just so nervous, and she was asking him to test her on these possible questions as well, so she doesn't, stumble when she's at the interview. And of course she got the job, but she was self-doubting herself the whole time. She didn't think she was good enough for this position, for this fancy luxury store. She couldn't believe they took her. However, she was ecstatic because, of course, this was her passion, so she couldn't wait to start her work. So she called her mom and her best friend, and she was so excited to tell them the great news that she finally got the job and she's moving to London. So Clare packed her bags and she moved to London all alone by herself on a train. And she started living in London with 2 other girls who were actually also employees of Harvey Nichols. And she became friends with them and they became roommates. And they lived in an apartment not too far away from Harvey Nichols. Clare and these 2 girls, they did everything together. They would go shopping together, they would go out in the evening together for a drink. As they worked together, they had similar days off and they would just spend the days off together. So Clare was very happy. Not only did she get a job at the Harvey Nichols, which was her dream job, but also she got herself 2 new best friends always so loving and friendly and gentle to everyone that she met, that it was kind of hard not to like her. Now we fast forward a bit to January of 2005, and at this point Claire has been working there for a little bit more than a year. While working one day in January of 2005, Claire was approached by one of the security guards at Harvey Nichols. His name was Michael Pesh, and they chatted for a little bit. Seemed like they liked each other, so Michael Pesh actually asked Claire to go on a date with him, and Claire agreed. Claire was actually used to guys asking her out all the time because she was so beautiful and a lot of men were falling in love with her, so she didn't even think anything of it. She was just thinking that it would just be one time date. And also Michael was very sweet to her all the time at work. He would always give her compliments, and she decided to give him a chance. Michael Pesh was a 30-year-old man who was born and raised in Slovakia, and he was actually a soldier in the Slovakian army for many years. He also worked as a security officer at an American embassy in Bratislava, which is in Slovakia. And then he relocated himself to UK, where he found a job at Harvey Nichols. And he actually started working at Harvey Nichols around the same time as Claire in 2003. Claire and Michael ended up going on 4 different dates over the course of 3 weeks. The first few dates actually went really well, and Michael would show that he's a gentleman. He would show that he really likes Claire, and Claire even told her mom about the dates. She never mentioned that she really likes him, but she did notice that he really admires her, so she liked that about him. Michael would show that he had a crush on Claire, but soon this crush turned a little intense, and the reason why they dated only for 3 weeks is because Claire began to feel very uncomfortable in front of him. She also realized that Michael is not her type. It's not usually the type that she would date. He was also 7 years older than her, or even, I think, maybe 8 years older than her. And Claire usually did not date such older guys. On top of that, he was going through divorce, so he was previously married. His wife was in Slovakia, and he was at that moment going through divorce, and she didn't need those kind of problems because she was only 21 years old at that time. Also, Michael, on the 3rd date, he started showing a completely different side of himself that Claire did not expect. He told Claire that she could not see her family or friends, and basically cannot hang out with anyone but him. And this was all happening too quickly for Claire, because they've only been at this point on 3 dates with Michael, and he's already telling her that his family there for a few days. And when he came back, he calls Claire at 5 o'clock in the morning to ask her to pick him up from the airport. And Claire, being such a nice person, she always wanted to please everyone. So Claire ended up going and picking him up from the airport that day. And Michael actually asked to go back to her place. And she lives with roommates, as you remember, so she didn't feel comfortable bringing him to her place. But she decided to bring him for just that day, and then he'll leave later during the day. But he ended up staying the night at her house. So she brought him in the morning. He stayed the whole day and the night, and he would not leave. He insisted to stay at her house, and she did not know how to get rid of him. So Claire actually called her mom, and she was very upset because she didn't know how to get rid of him from her place. She ended up walking Michael to the train station, and Michael ended up missing the train right in front of them. The train arrived. He didn't get on it. He continued going back to her house with her, and at that point Claire told Michael that he can do whatever he wants, that she's going to her house and he cannot come with her. And she just turned around and left him there standing outside. And Michael did leave, but it was far from over, because now Michael starts calling Claire 20 times a day. Every day he would call her. It got to the point that Claire stopped answering the phone. He was working with her at Harvey Nichols, so he would wait for her to finish work and he would follow her home. Every day he would wait for her and follow her home, and she was just afraid of him at this point. And sometimes he would even go to her place before she would finish work, so she would get to her house and he's sitting there on the steps waiting for her to arrive. And her roommates did not like that. Her roommates were annoyed, of course, because they constantly saw him at the house, sitting, lurking outside. You know, they also live there, so they didn't want some random guy outside their house every day. And one day, while he was sitting there waiting for Claire, the roommates came out and told Michael to leave. And they kind of chased him away. They told him that he should stop bothering Claire. He's always outside. They're tired of him. And so he ended up leaving that day. But this was not for long. This was actually just the beginning of the nightmare for Claire. Since they worked together with Michael, she could not really get away from him. And he would follow her around the store as well. He would creepily stare at her through the mirrors on a corner of the store. So everywhere she went, she was being watched by Michael. He would follow her around the store and beg her to come back to him. But I feel like they were never really together anyway, because they've only been on 4 dates. And I don't think Claire considered them a couple. He even asked his colleagues, some other security guards, to go and talk to Claire and tell her that he wants to be with her. Of course, they didn't think him seriously. They just laughed at him and said, okay. So Michael starts stalking Claire after work now. Before, she actually knew that he was following her, but now he becomes creepy and starts stalking her without her knowledge. So he would hide so she wouldn't see him. That's really scary, I think. He would like look in her windows. So one day in February of 2005, Michael, as he always was, creepily stalking her, and Claire had no idea about it. And Claire finishes her shift at 8 p.m. at Harvey Nichols. She was walking home, and it was kind of dark at that time. It was February. After 8 p.m. usually gets pretty dark. And he is walking behind her on the dark streets. Then he comes up behind her and grabs her, turns her around and tells her that he loves her, that he knows that she loves him too, and she just has to admit it. To which Claire told him that no, she does not love him and she wants nothing to do with him. And then Michael says, yes, you do, you stupid little girl. He screams this on the streets. Claire was so embarrassed. She was just wanting to get away from him at that point. She didn't want to report him at that point to the police because she felt very ashamed and embarrassed that she even ever dated him in the first place. And she also felt that since he didn't really actually ever harm her, she didn't really have any proof of his stalking, and police wouldn't even really do anything at that point. She also felt like she would be wasting police's time, which is so sad, but a lot of stalking victims feel this way, that police would not be able to help, unfortunately. Claire never talked about Michael to any of her friends because she felt embarrassed that she ever even dated him. She felt like she would be judged. She didn't even tell her best friend back home about Michael. Every day, Claire would be terrified to go home after work and find Michael sitting on the steps. It got to the point that she was just afraid to go home. She stopped getting enough sleep. Claire would be terrified to go to sleep because she kept wondering if Michael would find a way to get inside her house and go inside her room at night. So she ended up being late to work all the time because she never had enough sleep. She started getting eye infections. She couldn't concentrate on work either. Michael would follow her everywhere still. He would be following her from work. He would be on the same train as her. Every day she would see him on the train. She would see him after work, either following her or already at her house. He would constantly bombard her with text messages. It would be about 50 text messages a day, and the text messages would say, let's get back together, we're meant to be together, and if I can't have you, then no one else can. He seemed to not understand that their relationship is was not considered a criminal offense in England, unfortunately. So Claire simply didn't think that anyone would be able to help her, that police would be able to do anything about it, and she also thought that it might make matters worse by escalating the situation with Michael, and he would get more aggressive. One day, Claire started running away from Michael as she saw him following her on the streets as usual. And he started to chase her. And she ran towards the train. She ended up catching the train and getting on the train. And he got up to the train, ended up getting on the train as well. And on the train, he sat across from her and would just sit there and stare at her. What a creep. This is when Claire told Michael that this kind of behavior only pushes her further away from him, that she will completely lose interest in him if he continues doing this, which she already lost interest, but this is what she told him. Yet he continued doing this. Another incident was when she started running away again from Michael, and he started chasing her again. He got up to her and grabbed her, and she ended up falling to the ground, and she ended up screaming at him, "If you don't leave me alone, I will call police on you." To which his response was, if she reports him to the police, then he will kill her. Now we're gonna slip stitch to join the sides together. So Claire called her mom, and at this point her and her mom did not know what to do. If it's best not to call police because of what he said, he might actually follow up with his threat. Claire also opened up with her roommates about the situation with Michael, and the roommates knew about Michael, but they didn't know that the situation was so severe. So the roommates actually decided to report Michael to the store manager at Harvey Nichols. And this store manager decided to move Michael to another department at Harvey Nichols. So Harvey Nichols is huge. It's several floors. I think it's like, I don't know, like 5 or 6 floors there. So he moved Michael on a different floor, different department. And he was thinking by getting Michael further away from Claire that it might help, and he will stop stalking her at work. But it did not help, because Michael continued stalking. Claire. He would go up to her floor and continue watching her, staring at her, following her. So the chief security officer started looking into this more, and he took it more seriously because he was ex-policeman and he actually understood the gravity of the situation. He decided to look into CCTV footage in a store, and what he saw is that Michael was acting like a stalker. He was following her everywhere, and you could see it on cameras. And in the recordings, he could see that Claire had no idea that he's stalking her. And at this point, Michael's co-workers reported to the chief security officer that Michael was asking them what the maximum penalty would be for a murder in England. This is when the head of security decided to suspend Michael from Harvey Nichols for a while. He didn't fire him yet, but he just wanted to suspend him to teach lesson. But he told Claire that unfortunately this is all they could do at that time, and he recommended to go to the police so that they can take some more serious measures. Claire did listen to him, and she decided to finally go to the police and report Michael. And police seemed to take the situation very seriously. That is on the surface. And so police showed up to Harvey Nichols to arrest Michael. They actually called Michael to come to the Harvey Nichols to arrest him there. He ended up showing up not knowing that he's gonna get arrested. He shows up, gets arrested, and this arrest happened right in front of Claire. So while he's getting arrested, he's giving this creepy look to Claire and smiling at her. And at this point, Claire felt shivers. She felt so scared. She wasn't sure if she did the right thing about calling police on him, because he did tell her that there will be consequences if she tells police on him. And so now she was blaming herself that she probably shouldn't have done this. And now Claire called and told her mom that she feels bad about this, and she might have led him on to believe that she actually liked him at the time when they were dating, and this is why this is happening. And she starts blaming herself, unfortunately. And at this point, Michael was given a non-molestation order. And let go, pretty much. Now Claire did not feel safe at her own apartment, and her roommates decided to move to another apartment nearby, but so that Michael doesn't know where she lives now. And while she's packing her bags, she sees Michael Besh through the window, creepily smiling at her. And she gets scared. She calls police at this point. Police arrive, but Michael is nowhere to be seen. He has left already. He's somewhere else. On April 10th, 2005, so this is just 5 days after his arrest with police, he is seen lurking outside her new apartment now. He already found out where she lives. And Claire sees Michael, so she calls police again. And again, police arrive. And Michael is gone at this point. But Claire doesn't give up. And she says to the police that she will get in the car with them and look for Michael with them so they can arrest him, because she knows what he looks like and police might miss him. They did end up finding Michael because Claire pointed him out to the police. They arrest Michael in front of Claire once again. And as she was looking back at Michael and Michael is staring at Claire again, this is when Claire realizes that he might actually carry out his threats after all. It seemed that Michael was not scared of authority. He did not care about any consequences. He didn't care about police, and he didn't seem like he was scared of anything. A little more than a week goes by, so it's now April 19th, 2005. And at this point, Michael is now charged with threatening to kill Claire, as she explained everything to the police. But once again, Michael is released into society on bail because he was awaiting trial now, and somehow he was released before the trial. So he is now free to do whatever. He's free to roam the streets. is how it's turned out. Claire's life returns to normal for a little while. Claire's birthday was on June 25th, 2005, when she turned 22. So her mom got herself and her daughter tickets to go to Italy for 5 days to spend the birthday together and just to spend some time together because she's been through so much. This is when they really bonded with her mom. They spent the best time in Florence, Italy, and they went to concert, they went to festival there, restaurants, bars, and they were really best friends with her mom. And meanwhile, Michael, during this time, went back to Slovakia. Why was he even allowed to go back to Slovakia? He was on probation at this time, but his conditions of probation did not include that he cannot leave the country. So he ended up leaving the country for the whole summer. And what do you think he was doing there? He was training to obtain a firearms license. And it's actually harder to get a firearms license in Slovakia. You have to undergo a training, a special training for that. And you also have to pass a firearms test. So he was training for this for the whole summer. And finally, he was able to buy himself a handgun. And he registered the gun with the Slovakian authorities. I still can't believe that it's possible that after threatening Claire to kill her, and he was awaiting trial for that, he was able to go and leave the country and go and train in Slovakia to get a handgun there. I mean, with his history of being a soldier in Slovakia, that should be alarm bells there. So on July 20th, Michael Pesh traveled back to London on a plane, and in his luggage he had the handgun that he purchased in Slovakia. And for some reason no one cared that this handgun was in there, and they let him through the border controls. On August 31st, Michael is faced a day in court. Michael finally pleads guilty and makes it easier for everyone, because this means that the trial won't continue and Claire won't have to see him again as well. Otherwise, Claire would have to go to the courtroom herself, and she was really worried about that. Also, Claire was worried that it would be hard to prove that Michael was actually stalking her and threatening to kill her, because there was no other proof. These threats were verbal mostly, and there was no other evidence. So, after the trial was over and Michael pled guilty, Claire was so excited. She called her mom, she called her cousin to tell them the great news, and she was so happy that it's all over now, that she can finally relax. But unfortunately, it was not over, because Michael had other plans. And on September 13th of 2005, while Claire was working her usual shift at Harvey Nichols, and she was working until 8 p.m. and so it was 7:50 at that time, and her co-worker looked at her watch and smiled at Claire and told her it's almost time to go in 10 minutes. And her colleague said that Claire gave her the most beautiful smile at that time. This is when her co-worker noticed that there's a dark figure right behind Claire, but she didn't think anything of it because she thought it was one of Claire's boyfriends. his handgun and shoots Claire in the back of her head. And then she falls to the ground and he shoots her in the face 3 more times. He then fired another shot in the ceiling and points the gun at himself. And he killed himself at this time too. Claire actually died from the first shot, so hopefully she wasn't in pain. And the 3 other shots were not sure why he shot those shots in the first place when she was already dead. And her mom was actually celebrating a friend's birthday at this time. She got home really late. It was after midnight. And when she got home, the house was surrounded by police cars. She wasn't sure what happened. When the police told her the heartbreaking news, Trisha was her mom, she asked police, "It was Michael Pesh, wasn't it?" And policemen just nodded. After Claire's death, Trisha actually researched and found other moms who went through the same thing. They also had daughters that were killed by their own stalkers. Trisha and 2 other moms began to work with professionals, and they ended up establishing a charity organization called Protection Against Stalking. And in this organization, they train people to be advocates, to recognize stalking behavior. They also raise awareness of stalking and how serious it is. Trisha was also able to collaborate with a woman named Laura Richards, who was a former police officer for a violent crime and intelligent analysis unit, and this gave Trisha the ability to lobby the Prime Minister at the time of England for the stalking law to be changed. And with a lot of work and pressure, they were able to talk the Prime Minister into changing the law of stalking to a criminal offense for the first time in England history, because the Prime Minister realized that the current law that they had at that time was pretty much useless and did nothing against stalking. Of course, this can never bring Claire back, but her mom wanted to raise awareness that this is a